My husband left me because my brother convinced him I was cheating, and the truth destroyed my family. There were no long conversations, no chances to defend myself. He just came home one day, threw divorce papers on the table, and told me he had proof. Proof that would destroy me in court if I tried to fight it. I begged him to talk to me, to at least tell me what he thought I had done, but he refused to speak without lawyers present. My brother had been his best friend since college. They were inseparable, and apparently, that bond meant more than 6 years of marriage to me. The whole thing felt surreal. One day I had a husband, a family, a life I had carefully built over 6 years. The next day I had nothing but accusations and abandoned phone calls. My parents believed my brother immediately, without question, without hesitation. They always did. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the son they had always wanted more than they wanted a daughter. I was just the daughter who had apparently brought shame to the family name. My phone blew up with messages from relatives I barely spoke to, cousins I saw once a year at holidays, aunts and uncles who had never shown much interest in my life before. All of them were suddenly very invested in expressing their disappointment in me, their disgust at what I had supposedly done. The messages were brutal in their certainty. Nobody asked for my side of the story. Nobody even paused to consider that maybe, just maybe, there was another explanation. They had their villain and I was it. I tried reaching out to my husband through his sister, through mutual friends, through anyone who might listen and actually hear me. But my brother had done his work well, meticulously laying groundwork I hadn't even known existed. Everyone believed I had been unfaithful, that I had betrayed a good man who loved me, that I was exactly the kind of person who would destroy a marriage for selfish reasons. The isolation was suffocating in a way I had never experienced before. I stopped going to work because I couldn't face the pitying looks from co-workers who had heard rumors. The whispers that stopped when I entered a room. The way people avoided making eye contact with me in the hallways. I stopped leaving my apartment entirely after a few weeks of that torture. The depression crept in slowly at first, like water seeping under a door. Then all at once it rushed in like a flood, until I was spending entire days in bed, unable to find a reason to get up, unable to see a future that was worth living for. The divorce went through quickly. He wanted it done fast, and I was too broken to fight. I signed everything they put in front of me. I didn't care about the house, or the savings account, or any of it. I just wanted the nightmare to end, though some part of me knew it never really would. The thoughts got darker as the months went on. I found myself standing on my balcony for long periods, looking down at the street below, wondering if anyone would even care if I wasn't here anymore. Probably not. They all thought I was a cheater anyway. Maybe they would just say I couldn't live with the guilt. I don't know what made me call her. We had been best friends in college, but had drifted apart after I got married, and she moved 3 states away for work. Maybe it was because she was far enough removed from everything that she wouldn't have heard the rumors. Maybe I just needed to hear one friendly voice before I did something I couldn't take back. She answered on the second ring, and I broke down completely. I couldn't even form words, just sobbed into the phone while she kept saying my name, asking what was wrong, telling me to breathe. She drove 11 hours straight to get to me, barely stopping except for gas. When she arrived at my apartment and saw the state I was in, she didn't ask questions or demand explanations. She just packed my things, loaded them into her car, and took me home with her like I was a wounded animal that needed rescuing. Those first 2 months on her couch were a blur of darkness punctuated by small moments of light. She worked from home most days just to keep an eye on me. In the mornings, she would sit on the edge of the couch and say, "Okay, today we're going to brush your teeth." Just that. Nothing else. And I would cry because even that felt impossible. But she would wait, patient and unwavering, until I did it. The next day it would be brushing teeth and taking a shower. Then brushing teeth, showering, and eating something. Baby steps that felt like climbing mountains. She found me a therapist who specialized in trauma and depression. The first session, I sat there for 45 minutes without speaking. The therapist didn't push. Just said, "That's okay. We have time." My friend drove me to every single appointment for months, waited in the parking lot, and never once complained about the time it took from her own life. She sat with me through the worst panic attacks, the ones where I couldn't breathe, and was convinced I was dying. She held me while I cried for hours, soaking her shirt with tears and snot, and never once made me feel like a burden, even though I absolutely was one. One night, around week 7, we were watching some mindless show on television when I laughed at something stupid one of the characters said. It was the first time I had laughed in months. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "There you are. I was worried I'd lost you." That was when I realized I wanted to survive. Not just exist, but actually live again. Without her, I wouldn't have survived that year. I'm certain of that. I would have given in to those dark thoughts, would have taken the easy way out, would have let my brother's lies be the final word on my life. She saved me in the most literal sense possible. The therapist helped me understand that I needed to start over completely. Staying in the same city where everyone knew the false version of my story wasn't healthy. I needed space from all of it. So I found a small apartment 20 minutes from my friend's place and started rebuilding from nothing. The first year was the hardest. I got a job at a small marketing firm where nobody knew my history. On my first day, someone asked if I was married, and I froze. I hadn't prepared for that question. Divorced, I finally said and left it at that. The panic attacks still came, usually at night when I was alone. Sometimes triggered by nothing at all, sometimes by seeing a couple holding hands on the street. Year 2, things got incrementally better. I made a friend at work, someone who invited me to happy hour, and didn't push when I said no the first dozen times. Eventually, I said yes. We went to a bar, and I had exactly one drink before the anxiety became too much and I had to leave. But I had gone. That felt like progress. My therapist celebrated these small victories with me. "You showed up," she would say. "That's what matters." By year 3, I was sleeping through most nights without nightmares. I had joined a book club that met at the library. I was cooking real meals instead of surviving on delivery food. I started going to the gym, not to look a certain way, but because the endorphins helped with the depression. I was functioning. Not thriving, but functioning. Some days I even felt something approaching happiness. Year 4 was when I finally felt like I could breathe again. I got promoted at work. I hosted a small dinner party at my apartment, just 4 people, but it was the first time I had felt comfortable enough to have people in my space. My friend came, the one who had saved my life, and when she hugged me goodbye, she whispered, "Look at you. I'm so proud of you." And I was proud too. I had survived. I had rebuilt. I thought I had finally left that chapter of my life behind me. I was wrong. The knock on my door came on a Tuesday evening in late September. I wasn't expecting anyone, and when I looked through the peephole, I almost didn't recognize the man standing there. My ex-husband looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, maybe months. His eyes were red and swollen, his hair was a mess, uncombed and too long, and he was visibly shaking as he stood in the hallway. For a moment, I just stood there with my hand on the doorknob, completely frozen in time. Part of me wanted to pretend I wasn't home, to let him stand there until he gave up and left. Part of me wanted to open the door, just so I could slam it in his face with all the force I could muster. But curiosity won out, as it so often does. After 4 years of silence, after building an entire new life without him, what could he possibly want? What could be so important that he had tracked down my new address and showed up unannounced? I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. He looked at me with such desperate sadness that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered what he had done to me, how quickly he had believed the lies, how he had refused to even hear my side of the story. Any sympathy I might have felt evaporated instantly. He started crying before he even spoke. Just standing there on my doorstep, tears streaming down his face in the harsh fluorescent light of the apartment hallway, trying to form words through sobs. "I know," he finally managed to say. "I know the truth. I know you didn't. God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You need to leave," I said, my voice flat. "Please, just listen. Your brother. He confessed everything. He lied. He made it all up. You were telling the truth, and I didn't believe you, and his voice broke completely. I said leave. I never stopped loving you. I never moved on. I can't. I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." I felt vindication wash over me. Someone finally believed me. Then came the rage. "Where were you when I needed you?" My voice was cold, controlled. "Where were you when I was alone and broken? When I wanted to die? I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You chose to believe my brother over me. Your best friend over your wife. You didn't even try to hear my side. I know. I know, and I hate myself for it. Please, just give me a chance to explain what happened. No. Please. Get off my doorstep. Don't come back here. But he didn't stop. Over the next few days, my phone exploded with messages from different numbers. He was using other people's phones, creating new accounts, doing anything he could to get through to me. I blocked every single one. Then other family members started reaching out too. People who hadn't spoken to me in 4 years suddenly wanted to talk. My cousin sent a long message about family and forgiveness. My aunt called 3 times in one day. Even my father, who had disowned me completely after the divorce, sent a brief text asking if we could meet. I ignored all of them. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. I didn't owe them anything. My friend, the one who had saved my life, suggested I might want to meet with my ex-husband at least once. Not to reconcile, she clarified quickly when she saw my face, but to get answers, to understand exactly what had happened, so I could have real closure instead of just questions. I hated the idea at first. The thought of sitting across from him and rehashing everything made me feel physically ill. But she had a point. Part of me did need to know. Not for him. For me. The truth came out in pieces. My brother's fiancé had found messages between him and our mother. Not recent ones, but from years ago. Our mother had known about the lie from the beginning and helped him keep the secret. When his fiancé discovered these messages and confronted him, everything fell apart. He confessed, she ended their engagement, then told the rest of the family. Now the whole family wanted forgiveness. Not because they genuinely felt remorse for what they had done to me. They wanted me to forgive everyone so my brother's relationship could be saved. His fiancée had left him, and the extended family had turned their backs on him once they learned what he had done. My parents were desperate to fix things, to make it all go away so their son wouldn't be alone. The audacity of it was stunning. After 4 years of silence, after letting me suffer through hell without a single word of support, they wanted me to be the bigger person. They wanted me to save the brother who had destroyed my life. My friend helped me piece together the full story from what my ex-husband told me and what I learned from other sources. My brother had been dating someone a few years before all this happened. She had cheated on him, and it had devastated him. Instead of dealing with his trauma in a healthy way, he had developed this twisted hatred, this need to make someone else feel the pain he had felt. He had looked at me and my husband, seen how happy we were, and decided we were the perfect targets for his revenge. It was calculated, methodical, and absolutely evil. And our mother had helped him do it. When my friend suggested I meet with my ex-husband one more time, I almost said no. But she pointed out that I might have legal options. That what my brother had done wasn't just morally wrong. It might actually be criminal. The idea hadn't occurred to me before. I had been so focused on just surviving, on getting through each day, that I hadn't considered the possibility of actual justice. But once the seed was planted, I couldn't stop thinking about it. My brother had deliberately destroyed my marriage, my reputation, my mental health, and very nearly my life. And he was just going to walk away from that? I agreed to meet with my ex-husband one time. I chose a coffee shop in a public place where I felt safe. When he arrived, I didn't smile or try to make small talk. I told him exactly why I was there. I needed to understand the full scope of what my brother had done, so I could decide my next steps. He seemed almost relieved that I had a practical purpose for the meeting, like it took some of the emotional pressure off. He ordered coffee for both of us, even though I hadn't asked for any. And then he started talking. The story he told was worse than I had imagined. My brother had created a fake social media profile pretending to be someone I was supposedly having an affair with. This profile sent messages to my ex-husband containing intimate details about my daily routine, things only someone close to me would know. Because my brother was family, he had access to that information. He knew when I went to the gym, what time I got home from work, what I ordered at my favorite restaurant. He used all of it to make the fake profile seem credible. But he didn't stop there. He had also hacked into my social media accounts months earlier. I had left my phone unlocked at my parents' house during a family dinner, and he had taken the opportunity to get my passwords. Using those accounts, he sent messages to the fake profile, as if they were from me, arranging meetings, saying things I would never say. Then he deleted the conversations from my side, but kept screenshots that he sent to other people as proof. My ex-husband showed me everything on his phone. The messages, the photos that had been manipulated to look incriminating, all of it. I sat there staring at the evidence of my brother's betrayal, trying to process how someone could be this deliberately cruel to their own sister. The level of premeditation was staggering. He had planned this for months, carefully constructing a narrative that would be impossible for me to disprove. When my husband confronted me with what he thought was evidence of my affair, I genuinely had no idea what he was talking about. Of course, I denied it. But because my brother had deleted everything from my accounts, I couldn't prove my innocence. It just looked like I was lying and had covered my tracks. What made everything even worse, impossibly worse, was learning about our mother's role in all of this. She had known the truth for years. My brother had told her what he had done, probably seeking validation or absolution or maybe just bragging about his successful manipulation, and instead of forcing him to come clean, instead of doing the right thing, she had actively helped him maintain a lie. She had stood there at family gatherings, had looked me directly in the eye knowing full well I was innocent, and had let everyone continue to believe I was a cheater and a homewrecker. She had participated in conversations about my supposed infidelity, had expressed disappointment in me to other relatives, had played the role of the devastated mother whose daughter had brought shame to the family. All while knowing none of it was true. The betrayal from my brother was horrific and deeply painful, but the betrayal from my mother was somehow worse, cut deeper, hurt in ways I'm still trying to process. She was supposed to protect me. She was supposed to be on my side. Instead, she had chosen to protect my brother from the consequences of his deliberate, calculated actions. When my ex-husband finished explaining everything, he looked at me with such desperate hope. He asked if there was any chance, any possibility at all, that we could try again, that we could rebuild what we had lost. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Did he really think that after everything, after he had abandoned me so quickly and completely, I would just take him back? I told him the truth as clearly as I could. Even if I could somehow forgive him for not trusting me, for not fighting harder to hear my side of the story, I could never forget. I could never look at him without remembering how easily he had thrown away 6 years of marriage based on lies from my brother. We were done. We had been done for 4 years. Nothing was going to change that. But I did thank him for the information. And I told him I would need everything he had, every message, every screenshot, every piece of evidence my brother had sent him. Because I was going to make my brother pay for what he had done, and I was going to need all the proof I could get. Finding a lawyer who specialized in this kind of case took some time and considerable effort. Most of the attorneys I spoke with initially weren't sure if I had a viable case at all. What my brother had done was clearly morally wrong, obviously reprehensible, but proving damages in a civil case can be complicated and expensive. They warned me about the costs, about the emotional toll, about the possibility of losing and being responsible for court fees. Finally, after weeks of consultations, I found someone who understood exactly what I was trying to do and genuinely believed we could win. Her name was Patricia, a woman in her 50s who had handled similar cases involving defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. "Tell me everything," she said in our first meeting. "And I mean everything. Don't leave anything out because you think it's not important or too embarrassing." So I did. I told her about the fake messages, the hacked accounts, the photographs my brother had manipulated, about standing on my balcony contemplating jumping, about losing everything, my marriage, my family, my sense of self. She listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she looked up at me and said, "We're going to make him pay for this. Legally, methodically, and thoroughly. Can we actually win?" "With what you've described, yes. Defamation, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The fact that he created false evidence and used it to destroy your reputation gives us a strong case. The fact that your ex-husband kept all the evidence makes it even stronger." "How long will it take?" "A year, maybe more. Civil cases move slowly, but we'll get there." We spent hours going through everything, documenting it all meticulously, building the case piece by piece like assembling a puzzle where every piece represented another layer of my brother's deception. The lawyer confirmed what I had hoped. I had grounds to sue my brother for defamation, emotional distress, and fraud. The fact that he had deliberately created false evidence and used it to destroy my marriage and reputation gave me a strong case. When I told my ex-husband what I was planning, he immediately offered to serve as a witness. He said he wanted to help, that he owed me at least that much. I wasn't sure if his motivation was genuine guilt or if he thought helping me might somehow win him back into my good graces, but I didn't care. His testimony would be crucial, so I accepted his offer. Around this time, I started receiving more support from an unexpected source. There was a guy I worked with named Owen who had always been friendly, but professional. We occasionally had lunch together in the break room and made small talk about work projects. One day, I mentioned in passing that I was dealing with some family legal issues, and he told me he had gone through something similar a few years earlier. My uncle embezzled from my parents' business, he said, then tried to turn the whole family against them when they pressed charges. It was brutal. Took 3 years to resolve. How did you get through it? Therapy, distance, and eventually accepting that some people are just toxic, even when they're family. He paused. If you ever need to talk, I'm here. No pressure, no judgment. I appreciated that he didn't pry. Most people, when they hear about drama, want to know everything. He just offered quiet support without expectations. When I officially filed the lawsuit, things at work got complicated. My parents showed up one day, causing a scene in the lobby that security had to break up. Owen was there. He didn't ask what happened, just brought me coffee and said, "Rough day." The roughest. Want to grab dinner after work? Sometimes it helps to get out of your own head for a while. I hesitated. I'm not in a place for anything romantic. Neither am I, he said with a small smile. I just got out of a long relationship myself. I'm talking dinner as friends. No ulterior motives. So we went to a small Italian place where the food was good and the atmosphere was casual. We talked about everything except my lawsuit and his recent breakup. Movies, books, the hiking trail he had discovered last weekend, my failed attempts at learning to cook anything more complex than pasta. You laughed, he said at one point. What? Just now. You laughed. It's nice. You should do it more often. I realized he was right. I had laughed, genuinely, for the first time in months. When he drove me home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, lightness. Not happiness exactly, but the possibility of it. We started having dinner once a week, sometimes twice. He never pushed for more, never made me feel like he was waiting for me to be ready for something I couldn't give. One night, about 2 months into our friendship, I told him everything. The whole story. The lies, the betrayal, the standing on the balcony, the lawsuit. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he just said, "I'm glad you're still here. The world's better with you in it." That was when I knew he was different. When I officially filed the lawsuit against my brother, my parents completely lost their minds. My phone rang constantly with calls from both of them, which I didn't answer. They showed up at my workplace, which was mortifying. Security had to escort them out while my coworkers watched. They sent emails, letters, even had other relatives contact me on their behalf. The message was always the same. I needed to drop the lawsuit. I was tearing the family apart. My brother was fragile, mentally unwell, couldn't handle the stress of a court case. They made him sound like a victim of his own circumstances rather than someone who had deliberately orchestrated my destruction. I finally responded to one of my mother's messages. I wrote her a long email detailing exactly what her precious son had done to me. I reminded her that when I was at my lowest point, when I was genuinely suicidal, none of them had cared. My own mother had known I was innocent and had let me suffer anyway. I told her about the nights I spent on my balcony, seriously considering jumping. About the months I spent unable to leave my apartment because the depression was so crushing. About how I had lost everything, my husband, my family, my home, my reputation, my sense of self-worth, because of a lie she had helped perpetuate. And now she wanted me to show mercy to my brother? Now, she wanted me to think about the family? I hit send before I could second-guess myself, and then I blocked her email address too. A week later, on a Friday night when I was trying to have a quiet evening at home, my parents showed up at my apartment with my brother in tow. They pounded on my door for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 or 30 minutes. I stood on the other side, listening to them beg and plead and eventually yell. My brother barely said anything that I could hear. My mother kept insisting that I just needed to hear him out, that he was sorry, genuinely sorry, that he had made a terrible mistake, but didn't deserve to have his entire life ruined over it. A mistake. She actually called deliberately destroying my life, pushing me to the edge of suicide, and maintaining the lie for years a mistake. Like he had accidentally bumped into someone on the sidewalk or forgotten to return a phone call. I waited until they finally left, until I heard their footsteps fade down the hallway and the building's front door slam shut, and then I called my lawyer with shaking hands. She advised me to file for a restraining order immediately, which I did the very next morning. The whole situation had gone from painful to genuinely scary, and I needed legal protection. The legal process moved slowly, which my lawyer had warned me about from the start. Courts are never as fast as you want them to be, especially in civil cases. But things were happening behind the scenes that I only learned about later. My father had discovered that my mother had known the truth all along. Up until that point, he had been defending my brother because he genuinely believed my brother had made an error in judgment, had misunderstood something, had tried to protect his friend in a misguided way. Learning that both his wife and son had deliberately lied to him for years was apparently his breaking point. He filed for separation. Not divorce immediately, but legal separation. He moved into a hotel and stopped returning my mother's calls. My brother's defense attorney tried every tactic they could think of to get the case dismissed or to make me look like I was exaggerating for financial gain. They brought in a psychiatrist who testified that my brother had been suffering from undiagnosed trauma related to his previous relationship's infidelity. They tried to paint him as someone who had been in genuine psychological distress and hadn't fully understood the consequences of his actions. It was a manipulation attempt, trying to make the jury feel sorry for him instead of me. My lawyer was ready for it. We had our own expert witnesses, and we had something their side couldn't explain away. The messages between my brother and my mother proving that he knew exactly what he was doing and that she had helped him cover it up. During this period, my coworker's quiet support slowly became something more meaningful, though neither of us acknowledged it directly at first. He never pushed, never made any kind of move that would have felt inappropriate given what I was going through. But he was there consistently and reliably. When I had to miss work for court dates and legal consultations, he covered for me with our boss without me even having to ask. When I came back to the office looking stressed and exhausted, dark circles under my eyes from sleepless nights, he would leave a coffee on my desk without saying anything, just the way I liked it. Eventually, we started having longer conversations during lunch breaks and after work. He told me about his own experience with family betrayal, how an uncle had embezzled money from his parents' business and then tried to turn the family against them when they pressed charges. He talked about how he had eventually cut contact with certain relatives and how difficult but necessary that decision had been for his mental health. I found myself opening up to him in ways I hadn't with anyone except my therapist and my best friend. It felt natural, easy, like talking to someone who actually understood without needing everything explained. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I wasn't ready for that. Wasn't sure I would ever be ready again. But I was grateful for his presence in my life, for the normalcy he represented. One evening after a particularly grueling deposition, he asked if I wanted to grab dinner. Not as a date, he clarified. Just as friends, just to get out of our heads for a while. I said yes. We went to a small restaurant and talked about everything except the lawsuit. Movies, books, places we wanted to travel, stupid stories from our childhoods. It was the most normal I had felt in months. When he drove me home that night, I realized I was smiling. Actually smiling, genuinely, for the first time in what felt like forever. He walked me to my door, told me he was proud of how I was handling everything, and left. No pressure, no expectations. Just kindness. My lawyer finally tracked down my brother's ex-girlfriend, the one whose infidelity had supposedly triggered his breakdown. Getting her to agree to testify was tricky. She didn't want to be dragged into a lawsuit that had nothing to do with her. But when my lawyer explained the full situation, how my brother had used his relationship with her as justification for destroying an innocent person's life, she changed her mind. She agreed to give a deposition and, if necessary, testify in court. What she revealed during that deposition was devastating to my brother's defense, and I wasn't even surprised. The day she testified in court was the turning point of the entire case. I remember every detail of that morning. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood-paneled and formal. My brother sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. My mother sat in the gallery behind him, her face set in a hard expression of defiance. My father sat on the opposite side, alone. When the ex-girlfriend was called to the stand, I felt my heart rate spike. She walked in looking nervous but determined, her heels clicking against the tile floor. My brother's attorney had clearly not expected her to show up. You could see the panic flash across his face when the clerk called her name. She was sworn in, took her seat, and Patricia began the questioning. Can you describe the nature of your relationship with the defendant? We dated for 2 years.
It was
Complicated. Toxic, really. In what way? We both cheated on each other. Multiple times. He cheated first, I retaliated, then it just became this cycle of hurting each other. My brother's attorney shot to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. The witness's relationship with my client is not. It goes directly to the defense's claim that my client's brother was a traumatized victim of infidelity. Patricia interrupted smoothly. The defense has based their entire mitigation strategy on this premise. Overruled, the judge said. Continue. Patricia turned back to the witness. You said he cheated first?
yes.
Multiple times with multiple women. I found out about 6 months in. Instead of leaving, I did the same thing. It was stupid and vindictive, but I was 23 and thought that's what love looked like. Did the defendant ever exhibit manipulative behavior during your relationship? Constantly. She shifted in her seat, her voice gaining strength. He would lie to my friends about me, tell them I was unstable or cheating when I wasn't. He created fake social media accounts to message me as other people to see how I'd respond. One time he pretended to be a guy hitting on me just to see if I would flirt back. When I did, because I thought it was a stranger, he used it as proof that I couldn't be trusted. The courtroom was absolutely silent. I watched my brother sink lower in his chair, his face pale. So this pattern of creating false evidence and manipulating others to destroy relationships, this is consistent with behavior you witnessed from him? Objection. Sustained. Rephrase. Did you witness the defendant creating false evidence to damage relationships?
Yes.
He did it to me, to my friends, to anyone who he felt threatened by or wanted to control. My brother's attorney tried desperately to discredit her during cross-examination, suggesting she was bitter about their breakup, implying she was exaggerating. But it was too late. The damage was done. The jury had seen through the fiction of my brother as a heartbroken victim. They saw him for what he really was. My brother's former fiancée also testified, which surprised me. I hadn't expected her to get involved beyond providing the initial evidence. But she showed up and told the court about the conversations she had found between my brother and our mother. She read excerpts from those messages in which my brother explicitly admitted to fabricating evidence against me, in which our mother advised him on how to maintain the lie, how to keep the family on his side, how to make sure I stayed isolated and discredited. Hearing those words read aloud in court made me feel physically sick. My own mother had strategized about how to keep me suffering. The judge was clearly not impressed with my brother's defense. When his attorney tried to argue that my brother's mental health issues should be considered as a mitigating factor in the damages, the judge actually cut him off. Mental health struggles, the judge said, do not excuse deliberately destroying another person's life through calculated lies and manipulation. If anything, the premeditated nature of what my brother had done made it worse, not better. The fact that he had maintained the lie for years, had involved other family members in the deception, had watched his sister's life fall apart and done nothing to stop it. All of that spoke to someone who knew exactly what he was doing and didn't care about the consequences. When the verdict came back in my favor, I didn't feel the triumph I had expected. I felt exhausted. Validated, certainly. The court had officially recognized that I had been wronged, that my brother had committed real and measurable harm against me. Patricia leaned over and squeezed my hand. We did it. I looked across the courtroom. My brother sat motionless, his face blank. My mother was crying quietly. My father caught my eye and nodded once, acknowledgement, maybe respect. Owen was there in the back row. He had taken off work to be there for the verdict. My best friend sat beside him, the woman who had saved my life. She was crying too, but smiling. Outside the courthouse, my ex-husband was waiting. I hadn't seen him since he had testified weeks earlier. He looked different, lighter somehow, like he had set down a weight he had been carrying. Congratulations, he said quietly. You deserved this. Thank you for testifying. It was the least I could do.
He paused.
I'm seeing someone, a therapist, trying to figure out why I was so quick to believe the worst of you, why I didn't fight harder. That's good. I know we can't. I know there's no going back. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life being better than the man who failed you. I nodded. I hope you do. He walked away then, and I watched him go. That chapter was finally, definitively closed. The judge awarded me $35,000 in damages. My lawyer explained that while it might not sound like a huge amount compared to some lawsuits, it was actually quite significant for this type of civil case. More importantly, it was an amount that would be difficult for my brother to pay, especially since he didn't have substantial assets or savings. The court immediately placed liens on his accounts and property to ensure payment. The extended family's reaction was swift and brutal. Once the verdict was public knowledge, relatives who had previously defended my brother turned on him completely. His reputation was destroyed in a way that mine had been 4 years earlier, except this time the destruction was deserved. Cousins deleted him from social media. Aunts and uncles stopped inviting him to family events. The family group chat that I had been removed from years ago apparently exploded with people expressing their disgust at what he had done. Some of them reached out to me to apologize, but their apologies felt hollow. They were sorry now that a court had told them I was telling the truth. Where were they when I needed them? My parents were the only ones who continued to stand by my brother. My mother especially. She doubled down, insisting that everyone was being too harsh, that my brother had made mistakes but was still family, that I was being vindictive and cruel by taking money from him. My father tried to reach out several times after the verdict. Texts, emails, even a letter sent to my workplace. I ignored the first few attempts. But one evening, about 3 weeks after the trial ended, he showed up at the coffee shop where I sometimes worked on my laptop. "May I sit?" he asked. I looked up from my screen. He had aged since I last saw him up close. More gray hair, deeper lines around his eyes. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," he said immediately. "I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I filed for divorce. It's final next month." I heard. She chose him. Even after everything came out, even after what he did to you, she chose to protect him. I couldn't stay married to someone who would do that to their own child. "You chose him too," I said quietly. "When it mattered, I did. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life." His voice broke slightly. I believed the lie because it was easier than believing my son was capable of something so evil. That doesn't excuse it. Nothing excuses it. But I want you to know, I see you now. I see what happened to you, and I'm horrified that I wasn't there when you needed me. "Thank you for testifying," I said. It was all I could offer. It was the right thing to do. Several years too late, but still the right thing. He stood to leave. "I'm not asking to be part of your life. I know I lost that right. But if you ever decide you want to talk, my door is open. No pressure, no expectations. Just, the offer is there." I watched him walk away. I didn't know if I would ever take him up on that offer. Maybe someday, when the wounds weren't so fresh. Or maybe never. The choice was mine now, and that felt like enough. Watching the money transfer into my account felt surreal. $35,000. It was significant enough to change my immediate financial situation, to give me a cushion I had never had before. But the real value wasn't in the money itself. It was in what the money represented. Official recognition that I had been wronged. Legal validation that what was done to me was serious and harmful and deserved compensation. For 4 years, I had carried the weight of everyone thinking I was a liar and a cheater. Now I had a court document stating clearly that I had been the victim, not the perpetrator. That was worth more than any dollar amount. Owen and I moved in together 8 months after the trial. It wasn't always easy. I still had moments of panic, days when the past came rushing back. But he was patient. On my bad days, he would hold me and remind me that I was safe. "You know what I realized?" he said one night while we were cooking dinner together. "What?" "You're the strongest person I know. Not because nothing bad happened to you, but because everything bad happened and you're still here. Still fighting. Still building a life." A year after moving in together, he proposed. Simple, no big production. Just the two of us on our couch on a random Tuesday. "I don't need an answer right away," he said. "I just need you to know that I want forever with you. Whenever you're ready." I said yes 3 months later. We got married at the courthouse with just my best friend and his parents present. No big wedding, no family drama. Just two people who chose each other, building something real. My best friend, the woman who had saved my life 4 years ago, remained my anchor through everything. She had been there for the worst moments and for the moments of triumph. She celebrated the lawsuit victory with me, helped me process the complicated emotions that came with it, and reminded me regularly that I was stronger than I thought. She was the sister I should have had, the family member who actually showed up when it mattered. I told her frequently that I owed her my life, and she always brushed it off, saying that's just what friends do. But it wasn't what friends do. It was what exceptional human beings do, and I would never stop being grateful that she was in my life. Looking back now, I can see how far I've come. That version of me standing on the balcony seems like a different person entirely. The path from there to here was long and painful, but I didn't give up. I kept choosing life, even when it was hard. The money sits in savings, mostly untouched. I keep it there as a reminder of what I survived and overcame. I still think sometimes about what might have been. But then I remember, when I needed him most, he wasn't there. He chose to believe my brother, without even trying to hear my side. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. My brother tried to contact me a few times after the verdict. I blocked every attempt. I heard he's struggling financially. His fiancée never took him back. Most of the family wants nothing to do with him. He's not worth my emotional energy anymore. My mother continues to stand by him, blames me for everything. She's made her bed. There are moments when I'm caught off guard by grief, not for the people I lost, but for what could have been with a different family. A brother who protected me. A mother who chose truth. Parents who loved unconditionally. That's the loss I mourn sometimes.
My current partner knows all of this about me.
I told him everything early on because I didn't want any secrets between us. I needed him to understand why I was the way I was, why I had trust issues, why I sometimes pulled away when things got too intense. He listened to the whole story without judgment, and when I was done, he just held me and told me he was glad I had survived. That's when I knew he was different. He didn't try to fix me or tell me I should forgive my family or any of that useless advice people love to give. He just accepted me as I was, damage and all. We talk about the future sometimes. What we want from life, where we want to be in 5 or 10 years. I'm careful not to make promises I might not be able to keep. I've learned the hard way that life can change in an instant, that things you think are solid can crumble without warning. But I'm hopeful in a way I haven't been in a long time. I can see possibilities now instead of just obstacles. That's progress. My best friend jokes that she's going to be the maid of honor at my wedding someday, and I always laugh and tell her not to get ahead of herself. But secretly, I like imagining that future. A wedding where the people in attendance actually care about me, actually showed up when it mattered. A family built on choice instead of blood. Sometimes the family you make is better than the family you're born into. I'm living proof of that. The strangers who followed my story online, the ones who sent supportive messages and words of encouragement during the lawsuit, made a bigger difference than they probably realized. On my darkest days, I would read through those messages and remember that people I had never met believed in me and wanted me to succeed. It helped more than I can adequately express. So to anyone reading this who offered kind words or just quietly rooted for me, thank you. You helped save my life too. I'm not going to pretend that everything is perfect now. I still have anxiety about trusting people. I still have moments when the depression threatens to pull me under. I still wake up sometimes from nightmares about that period of my life when everything fell apart. But those moments are becoming less frequent. The good days outnumber the bad ones now. I'm building something real and lasting, and I'm doing it on my own terms with people who genuinely care about me. That's more than I ever thought I would have again. The legal victory was important, but it wasn't the end of my healing journey. If anything, it was just another step along the way. Justice doesn't erase trauma. It doesn't undo years of pain, but it helps. It helps to have the record set straight, to have official validation that you weren't crazy, weren't lying, weren't the problem. It helps to know that the person who hurt you faced real consequences. Not perfect consequences, maybe not even sufficient consequences, but real ones nonetheless. That has to be enough, because it's all I'm going to get. I've thought about writing all of this down properly someday, maybe even publishing it. Not for revenge or to publicly shame anyone, but because I think there are other people out there who have experienced family betrayal and might benefit from knowing they're not alone. That it's possible to survive it, to rebuild, to find happiness again, even when it seems impossible. If sharing my story could help even one person feel less alone or give them hope, it would be worth it. For now, though, I'm focused on the present, on my job that I actually enjoy, on my partner who treats me with kindness and respect, on my best friend who remains my rock through everything, on my therapist who continues to help me process all of this, on building a life that feels authentic and true to who I am now, not who I was before everything happened. That version of me is gone, and I've made peace with that. The person I am now is stronger, more resilient, and far less willing to accept mistreatment from anyone. That's not a bad trade. So here I am, 5 years after my world fell apart, finally feeling like I'm standing on solid ground again. The journey was brutal. There were moments I didn't think I would survive. But I did survive, and more than that, I've actually built something good from the ashes of what was destroyed. My brother tried to ruin my life, and in many ways, he succeeded. But he didn't destroy me. I'm still here. I'm still fighting. And I'm finally, genuinely okay. That's my story. It's messy and painful, and not the triumphant tale of complete victory that people sometimes want to hear. But it's real. It's mine. And I'm proud of myself for living through it and coming out the other side. If you're going through something similar, if someone you trusted has betrayed you in a way that feels impossible to overcome, please know that it does get better. Not quickly, not easily, but eventually. Hold on. Keep fighting. Find your people and let them help you. And never let anyone make you believe that you deserved what happened to you. You didn't. You never did. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe my current relationship will last. Maybe it won't. Maybe I'll reconcile with my father someday. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll have kids and build the kind of family I wish I had grown up in. Or maybe I'll decide that's not for me. The not knowing used to terrify me. Now I find it almost comforting. Because it means anything is possible. The story isn't over yet, and I get to decide how the next chapters go. No one else. Just me. And that, more than anything else, is what I fought for. The right to write my own story instead of living inside someone else's lie. I won that fight. Not perfectly, not without scars, but I won. And I'm going to keep winning one day at a time for the rest of my life.